Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici. Welcome my friends and welcome to my channel, Fountain Pen Therapy. Today we'll be looking at, I would say this is probably my first formal review of a Chinese manufactured pen, fountain pen. I know I've mentioned a few Chinese fountain pen makers during my award videos, but I didn't really look into any particular pen in any greater detail. So I would say that this is my first review of Chinese pens. There you go. And I thought I'd start out with probably amongst my favorite, if not my favorite, 4 Chinese manufactured pens that I have in my collection at least. And we'll get into the details later on. There may be a few BBS pens that I also enjoy tremendously and I think are great little pens. But these are my 4 favorite. And they are manufactured by, at least when I bought them, by an outfit by the name of Moonman. And from what I understand from reading, and please, nobody quote me on this, it's not the Bible, as they say, but my understanding is that because they had a litigation with another pen manufacturer over the rights to the name or to the words Moonman, they decided, at least for any sales outside of the Orient, that to use the new name, which is Majohn. This is why this is either Moonman or Majohn. And it's the M800. The model is M800. At least when I purchased them, they were known as Moonman. So without further ado, I think they're a collection of 4. It's a great little pen. And we'll look at the details, and I'll get into what I like and what I don't like about these pens. And we'll do a writing sample, a size comparison, and we'll take it from there. So let's go to my overhead camera and get the show on the road, as they say. Well, here they are. They're these 4 in the middle here. Actually, let me just remove the 2 because there's a size comparison at the same time. These are the 4. We have the M800. This is what's referred to as the Amber. What a beautiful pen. I mean, this resin, look at that. Hey, when you get the swirls, the chatoyancy in there, really nice. It has this transparency that's just slight because you can almost see the converter right through it. Nice finial on both ends. Golden bands, very nice clip. Reminds you of something. In terms of the interior, you could see that the resin goes right to the end here with a couple of additional bands. The screwing mechanism here is, you can hardly feel it. So it's well machined, as they say. And that's the Amber. And we'll get into more about the inside of this pen in a second. I just want to introduce the 4 of them. This is just the green model. I don't believe that there's anything other than green as its description. There again, you can see the swirls there. Chatoyancy is very nice. So that's basically the green model. Then I have this beautiful splashy purple, as I call it. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Again, the black swirled in there, semi-transparent. Very nice. I think a very good-looking pen. And then we have the Galaxy Blue that I believe is being used by several Chinese manufacturers, including Pen BBS. This blue is where you get the most chatoyancy. It's in this resin that is really nice. And at the price they were going at the time, it depended. You can either get them with a Bach nib, such as this one, or you can get them with a Moonman, or what is now referred to as the Majohn nib. I think they had fine or medium. Nice little nib, nothing to write home about. But if you chose the pen with a Bach nib, it almost doubled the price. Okay, I chose them all with Bach nibs, except for one, and I forget which because the nibs have all been replaced. So those are and before we look at some of the things that I don't like about these pens, just a size comparison. First of all, at the outset, when these things came out, a lot of people felt that they were a copy of the Leonardo Officina Italiana. And at the beginning, Leonardo offered their pens with 2 bands, I believe, instead of the 3-band nib pen cap. But you could see the resemblance in design. Look at the clip, almost an exact copy. But in terms of having, the bands that way, the finials, pretty good imitation or a look-alike anyway. So they felt that this was and there were a lot of, at that time when they came out, a lot of comparisons between the early versions of the Leonardo Officina Italiana and the Moonman M800, as they called it at the time. And if you give me a second, I come back with I think it's the Positano model, because I have here the Sorrento, but I don't have the Positano model, and I want to show you that they almost look alike. So just give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm back with the Positano model. Here's the Positano model, which was one of the earlier versions of Leonardo Officina. As you could see, there was the 2-band, 2 rings, and very, 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 very similar. And that's when you had a bunch of reviews, basically stating that our friends at Moonman had managed to reproduce Leonardo Officina earlier versions of the Momento Zero. There are some differences, as you could see. There's an additional ring there, which I think is a nice touch, actually, by Majohn or Moonman. But other than that, you can see that even the step down here, going down to the nib, very, very, very similar. Very similar. But I got to tell you that the similarities stop there. And let me, this will get me to discuss what I don't like about this pen. Now, this is the difference between this manufacturer and Leonardo Officina. You see that it doesn't screw in right away. There's kind of a, depending on how you don't get the screwing mechanism right away, and you have to play around with it. Right now it works, but you see, it doesn't get on, and then it latches on. You have to play around with it. Also, another thing that I don't like about this pen are the cheap converters they have. This converter in particular is just an absolute disaster to fill. I don't know how I managed to actually fill it that much. Most of the times I can't get this converter to fill more than half. Very cheap. The suction is not great. You can still see bubbles in there. And that really the difference between that and a Leonardo Officina Italiana nib, which has got the steel. I mean, that's why I say that's where the comparison ends. And I believe they also, if I'm not mistaken, you probably accessed it from the top as well. Okay, and I can access it here. And I don't believe that we have the same thing with our friends at Moonman, but I'll check. Oh, I got my thing stuck in there now, but I'll get that out later. In fact, I don't believe that the Moonman allows that option, but let me check. I forget now. No, it doesn't. See, that's locked in. So obviously there's got to be a difference between, a $35, $40 pen or $60 if you include the nib, and a $250 or at the time $250 Canadian dollars anyway, about 150, 160 euros. So, it can't be exactly the same thing. So that's for sure there's got to be some differences. Now, let me just pop out of there my Positano top here so I can put back in. Actually, this is the Sorrento. In terms of size comparison, when you compare it to the original Positano, just slightly bigger. Although, and same thing when you compare it to the Sorrento. This is my Momento Zero Grande. You can see substantially bigger. Compared to this is my Delta Journal. It's much bigger. In fact, the Journal is even smaller than the Momento Zero. So that's a quick sampling of the size of these 4 pens. But I still think they're my favorite Chinese pens. Put it bluntly, I use them very, very often. They're on my, on my ink pens for the week very, very often. And the beauty about having all 4 colors is that I can bring these 4 pens, change their nibs, put whatever nib I want, and I've got almost every real color that I like to use, which is the brown, the green, the purple, and the blue. I would be missing the red, but my purple would replace it in certain ways. So those are the pens. Now let's take a look at I'm going to do a writing sample, and in this regard what I propose is a series of inks. Let me just put them down this way so you could see. This is the Rohrer Klinger, which I've got all of them. Very, very nice ink. Again, if you're looking at an ink to use on a daily basis, not great sheen or shimmer or some shading, not a fancy ink. It's pretty straightforward, but some very nice variations in colors, all kinds of blues, kinds of purples, all kinds of greens. So very, very nice ink that I would recommend. For my brown, I don't believe they make a real brown ink. So for my brown, I've chosen this KWZ ink, Cappuccino. By the way, this ink smells great. It smells like vanilla candy when you open it. So that's my handmade KWZ ink for brown. So those are the 4 inks. In terms of the journal, here's my journal. This is a journal that I reviewed recently in one of my videos, which I entitled Alternative Notebooks. In other words, notebooks that are a little bit in the background, but that I found very, very interesting. This is the B7 Bulky that I purchased from Etsy. It's an A5 size. It came with this plastic cover, nice blue, and I got to tell you, the paper is just exquisite. And we're going to test it with these Moonman nibs or Moonman pens and see what gives. Okay, so we're going to skip. Actually, I'm going to skip a page like I usually do, and we'll ink the pens. The pens have been inked, and we'll do one at a time and see where this takes us. Let's start with my Amber. So this is and please forgive me, I'm going to give it the name that I purchased them as, Moonman M800. The nib that I replaced, by the way, this is it's a Bexley broad nib. It's a Bexley broad nib. I don't know if you could see that. Here we go. Let me just fling around with my cameras. With my camera, there we go. Just having a hard time getting it. Okay, it just doesn't want to focus. Okay, but it's a Bexley, here we go. Bexley nib, broad nibs, really, really nice, smooth nib, one of the smoothest broad nibs that I have in my collection. Very, very nice, steel nib. So the nib is a Bexley. I always forget if there's an E here, but please forgive me if I misspelled it. Bexley, and it's a broad. The ink is the KWZ Cappuccino. Very nice ink, by the way. It has some very interesting shading and brown, variations of brown when you ink it up. So this paper is also very nice. It reminds me a lot of the Moonman paper. In other words, there's a little bit of a, it's not a feedback, but it's very slippery. It's almost like there's a plastic coating on this paper. But it's very, very nice, very, very smooth. And you can see that the broad section of this nib gives me some minimal line variation. That's the brown. Let's ink down the green. And this green one has this one has an original Bach Leonardo Officina stub nib. So this is and this time I will use the new name. Oh, okay. The Majohn M800 Green. Huh? This nib is not cooperating. I got a feeling that these pens have been not in action for a while, so I apologize. The nib is a Bach stub with the Leonardo Officina Italiana branding, and the ink that I'm using is the Roher Klinninger. And this one is called Verdura. Wow. I'm having a hard time with this nib. So either the nib or the paper. I'll let you know in a second once we conclude this. So that's the green. Let's look into purple now. Yeah, it was the nib. Probably explains one of the reasons why, unfortunately, Leonardo decided to go with the Jowo nibs. Majohn M800. And the added bonus here in terms of the nib, I don't know if you've noticed it, is that this is the Bach titanium broad nib. So it's the titanium. And it's a broad. The ink, again, it's the Rohr Inklinger. And this one by the name of Solferino. Very nice purple. Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah. That's the ink. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the paper, and not with this nib it isn't anyway. I can tell you that much. Very wet ink, by the way, this Solferino. Very, very, very nice. Very, very nice. So that's the purple. Let's see what the blue gives. I believe the blue, I replaced the nib as well, but I'm not sure. I'll tell you in a second. No, that's no, that's a stub. So that's a replaced Bach stub. Yeah, it's a 1.1 stub. It's a 1.1 stub. Definitely not the paper. So M800 nib. I know you guys can notice the difference in my handwriting from when I go from a stub to a normal medium or broad nib. Just improves it by by a mile. This is the Bach stub. And the ink, again, it's the Rohr Klingner. And the title or the name of this ink is Blue Mate. Isn't that a gorgeous blue? I think it is. Just a little bit of, like I said, no sheen, no shimmer, but some interesting shading when the ink dries. But this blue is just a really, really nice blue. So that's the, so if we recap, here are the four colors. I think the pen Oh, maybe we should just get back and give it a rating so I can note it in the book. The rating, well, let's look at the quality, the design. I got to give it a 7.5 because I think, unfortunately, it's a really good look-alike. The build quality of these Majohn M800 pens, I think, is really great. I would give it a 9.3. In terms of the nibs, well, the Bach nibs that you pay $20, $30 more are still fine nibs. I would give it a 9.5. In terms of value, here's where I think I would give it a 9.8. Given the price range and what I paid for these pens, I think they're a great bargain. I would invite everybody to get one. Really, you get 4 colors, ink them up with some interesting inks. This is a fine, fine writing instrument for the $30, $40 that they're asking you, depending if it's US or Canadian, of course. So that's my point of view. I hope you enjoyed this video, the introductory video. I hope you enjoyed this brief review. I invite you to visit my website and to invite you to subscribe. If you have any comments, please don't be shy. Leave them along. By the way, here in Montreal, the weather is just absolutely fabulous. We're going into the higher 20s. I think we're over the hump. My golf season has started. Everything is all right. So, buongiorno, buonasera, and see you next time. Thank you.